Good evening. First of all, on behalf of Richland County CASA, I want to thank you folks for coming out. Again, it shows the kind of citizens we have here in Richland County. My name is James Washington, and I'm employed with Richland County CASA. CASA is an acronym that stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocate. We are the guardian ad litems for children in foster care in Richland County. Whenever a child comes into foster care through allegations of abuse and neglect, the law says that child is afforded to have a guardian ad litem. In our family law system, there's always going to be DSS, there's always going to be the parent, there's always going to be a guardian there to advocate for that child's needs. Now, when you first think about child abuse and neglect, you think about property abuse cases and neglect cases, and that's part of the foundation of our program. But we go beyond that, though. When you think about abuse, think about those kids who you see in the news and hear all those horrific stories about. And when you think about neglect, think about some of those unspeakable positions and conditions a lot of our children and families live in. But we seem to realize too that we forget, we're dealing with families, not just children. Because these children don't live by themselves. These children live with families who are having some crisis. And I think the fundamental responsibility that we have, not only as a community and as a society, is work with getting our families back together again. That's why I'm so blessed to say Richland County is very pleased with our citizens. Annually, we rank in the highest percentile of retaining volunteers because of their commitment to our children and our families. Annually, we are distinguished by some type of national acclaim because of the volunteers we do have. We recognize that our volunteers give it the most precious commodity you ever can think of, which is your time. This is my living, this is my profession, this is what I do. I've done this for 30 some odd years, where for 18 years I investigated cases with the Department of Social Services. And for the last 12 years, I've had the privilege of working with Richland County CASA, working with citizens who give us that precious commodity of time to give back to our kids. Now, unfortunately, again, some of the things that we deal with aren't always pleasant. And we recognize that in the real world, bad things happen to good people all the time. If you see my little friend here, I call her Jessica. And Jessica and I have been around many places. And don't let that angelic face and those cute eyes fool you. She's grown. I'm sure you probably have known some grown Jessicas in your time frame, your lifestyles. In Jessica's world, though, and we'll say my Jessica's 12, but Jessica's not always a happy child because she realized that on Fridays, her dad gets paid. And when her dad gets paid, he usually drinks. And unfortunately, when he drinks, he has a bad habit of coming into her room. And although she's 12, he's been doing it since she's been 7. So see, Jessica's not really a happy child these days. And sometimes those secrets like that cause Jessica to have problems that she does. If you open up this pamphlet, you see my little buddy, and I call him Tyrone. Tyrone was one of the soldiers. At the close of business on March 31st of this year, Richland County had 831 kids in foster care. The sad part about it, 40% of those kids don't even reside in Richland County because they're shortage of bed spaces. So we have kids in Spartanburg and Charleston and Sumter and Aiken and Florence and Rock Hill where there's a bed space available. And if you're, bless you, if you're a sibling package of 2 or 3 kids, you're often separated. The plight that these kids share is not always pleasant. And I say all these things only to say too, though, the role of a volunteer is not to be the Easter Bunny or Boys and Girls Club or make people feel good, whatever. Our primary duty, again, is to be an auxiliary of the court system. We're there for that special purpose to make sure we go out, go through a scrutinized training program, a background check program, but we're there for the primary purpose, again, to be an auxiliary of that courtroom judge. To share with that judge, Your Honor, this is what I think, this is what I feel, this is what I believe is in this child's best interest, the family's best interest. The voice of a volunteer is a very powerful voice. Imagine going into a courtroom, not like this one, but talking to a family court judge and telling the judge, Your Honor, this is what I think, feel, and believe. Trust and believe, DSS workers cannot do the same thing. DSS workers are agents of a governmental agency that are instructed to say, think, and do things. And unfortunately, again, we can't trust our parents to say that this will never happen again. But that guardian, that person who gives up that precious commodity of time, that supervisor, that goes out there and gives back to the community, can tell a judge what they think and what they feel, and say what they believe is in this family's best interest. Those are powerful words, folks. And it's kind of sort of gets me back to the situation where it's just strange how, apropos, April is Child Abuse Neglect Awareness Month. It just happened to be in April. And it's equally apropos too, though, believe it or not, I actually have a training class starting tomorrow, where citizens, unlike yourself, like yourself, come out to a training program and go through a rigorous 2-week training where we share with you all the responsibility of a volunteer, to become volunteers, to be part of a national award-winning program where you say, what can I do to give back? And we help you. We have a staff of probably 25 now, and I'm sure most of you folks, if you're that in tune to be part of our program here at Richland One-on-One, you probably know what's the landscape of DSS. And unfortunately, DSS is going through some changes right now. It's sad, we went to a training a few years ago, last year, and went to a program where the room was packed. Wherever we go, we usually fill up the stadium, fill up the places. And we asked the first 84 people to stand up. Took up probably 3/4 of the room. And when we share with that crowd, that was the number of child fatalities we've had in our state. You can hear a pin drop. When you think about 84 children that were involved with the Department of Social Services statewide last year are no longer here. That's a concern. The thing that we try to share with our volunteers is that as a volunteer, you want to make sure every child deserves to have a safe, nurturing home. Non-negotiable. Every child deserves to have that safe and nurturing home. Plan A should always be that parent, that biological parent, having that provide that safe and nurturing home. Plan B, unfortunately, sometimes are those friends and relatives and collateral who try to step in to help out their family members. That's what families do. And unfortunately, Plan C is the state. But the state would tell you up front, the state never had an intention of raising these kids. That's why we have warehouses full of kids with not really that kind of supervision because it wasn't really their jobs. The sad part, I heard a statistic recently where it said a child who spends an appreciable amount of time in foster care is more prone to post-traumatic stress disorder than soldiers coming back from Afghanistan. And that's spooky. To hear and think that a child who spent, and again, appreciable could be a weekend, a month, a year, 6 years, 18 years. But a child who spent an appreciable amount of time in foster care is more prone to post-traumatic stress disorder than soldiers who were trained to hear that next sound might be your last. And these kids are more prone to this disorder than these soldiers are. And we know what's happening to them when they come over here. And it's spooky, considering every year annually, thousands and thousands of kids are being signed out at 18 into society, no more prepared than they were when they first got here. Those are crazy numbers, folks. As a young DSS worker, years and years and years ago, early 90s, we had a state legislator that came to us that said the state of South Carolina at that point had already purchased land and had blueprints for prisons to build in the years 2030 and the years 2040. The sad part about that, despite the fact that some actuarian had went through the process and found with growth charts, this, that, and other, that there could be a population boom to the point that we need to put some of these prisoners someplace. The spooky part about the whole scenario is the fact that they were projecting a fourth of the population to come from foster care. And if that's not spooky enough, think about it. The state of South Carolina at that point was preparing to build prisons for kids that haven't been born yet. What volunteers do, folks, is help break that cycle. Now again, we have no magic dust or special word that you can sprinkle on things, but I'm here to tell you, a child who has that strong advocate gets those services that child and family is entitled to. A child who has that strong advocate works on behalf of not only that child, but try to put your family back together again. A child who has that strong advocate who said, no, not on my watch that this child's not going to go, this family not going to go without services when there's services available. There's money out there for our kids. Our kids deserve to have the best that I can give the child. I did a presentation once where we asked about what is the most concerning thing that most child should ever have. And very few of our kids talked about hope. When your life being basically about survival, hope doesn't really have a whole lot of room. And sometimes we big people need to take more responsibility for what's happening to our little ones, because again, after all, we're the ones that's supposed to be taking care of them. So again, when we think about what a volunteer does, the training that we go through, the matching of a case that you have, the following that child, the building a rapport with that child, or working with that family, or putting the family together again, we want to make sure that we are listening to these kids, hopefully plant that seed of hope. A lot of these kids. You know, it's sad sometimes too, though, when you see a child, and we could think of war stories and fill the rest of this evening with stories, but when you see stories where, for the most part, all these kids just want is a family, a home, someplace to belong, someplace that's going to nurture them. Beyond the academic part, beyond the athletic part, beyond all the extracurricular part, just a family. Someplace you sit down, have a meal with, share things, go through things with. So you see those families that's all so dysfunctional where the tension sometimes, the secret sometimes, the guilt sometimes are so horrendous that, wow, no wonder why nothing can thrive in those things. And you see things happening in our world too, where again, that evolution that takes place where kids are being raised by their grandparents. Okay? Only because the biological parent didn't do what they were supposed to be doing. So imagine how disheartening it is sometimes in the real world that when you have grandparents and despite the love they have for those kids, can't do right by them. When you have a grandparent who probably raised this child for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and she may be up in age and it's low income or fixed income, and this, that, and the other, and despite the fact she cares for this child, she can't do right by this child. And as a worker and as a volunteer, or as a worker and a volunteer sometime, and I asked that grandma, how are you going to take care of this child? And she tells me the Lord will provide. And I got to tell her, no, SC&G won't take that. Bible won't take that. And these kids deserve to have somebody that's going to step up for them and provide these things for them. And my concern goes for those family members who, for the right reason, do the wrong thing. Our kids are survivors in foster care. And I probably violate several rules of foster care by saying, and probably painting this doom and gloom picture, we have outstanding kids in foster care. We recently had a young lady who I actually recall bringing her in from 2nd grade. That young lady just graduated from high school and has a 4-year scholarship to Winthrop University. We have several stories where countless kids who want to do outstanding things. And sometimes, too, though, we planted that seed where success, as we know it, is not the success they're looking for. Success is not based on a zip code where you live at, or how much money you have in the bank, or what size car you have. Success means you can look in the mirror and say, thank you for another beautiful day, and have opportunity to do it again for the others. This kind of message of success that we try to give our kids. But far too many times, people look at success and failure in black and white by materialistic things. As a volunteer, the most precious commodity you give that child, in addition to being an auxiliary to the court system, is providing that child that gift of hope that somebody that has nothing to do with you cares for you, wants to see you do better. But we're real restricted too, and I hate that useless phrase of staying in your lane. You know, that's so archaic these days still, but still, we try to admonish our volunteers to make sure that as they stay in their lane, that they do the right thing for the child, what the law requires you to do. There is no law that expects people or tells people you have to excel. Okay? Just like there is no law that says you have to clean your house up every day or make up your bed every day. Okay? Well, what the law does say, though, as far as cleaning your house up, as long as it's not a safety or a hazard, you live as trash as you want. And safety and health is sometimes relative to age. But one thing for a 9-month-old crawling on the floor is different from a 12-year-old who can clean it up. Although there are certain things we get into sometimes where, again, there are certain things universally unacceptable. And somebody needs to draw the line. Because the animal is not fit to live in conditions like that. You know, as a young worker for DSS, my first experience watching or experiencing petrified bologna. You might wonder, what is petrified bologna? And I knew it was a piece of bologna because I saw the red band around on the counter. It accidentally slipped and hit the floor and shattered. Like, wow. And this is in access to kids who are hungry. The condition that people live themselves in. Now think about it. On the surface, when you see things like that, you're thinking, how can anybody do that? Now remember, it didn't happen overnight. That is a slow erosion of stuff happening to somebody who just couldn't help themselves anymore. They didn't choose to say, I'm just going to give up. Stuff happens. Well, folks, again, I think it's apropos that we are in April, and April is Child Neglect Awareness Month. It's also equally apropos that I have a training class starting tomorrow. For those of you who are interested in that program, on the back of our brochure, contact information. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry, we'll make sure you get one. Please, if not now, sometime. But don't let it be a story in the LTS before you say, wow, what else can I do to give back? Thank you, folks, for your time.